you to get a copy. I've asked Jordan if he'd lead us in an invocation or a thought, and then Lisa, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Our Father in heaven, we are truly grateful to be gathered together as community members. Please bless us as we meet together, that we can find common ground in all things, that we can work together to do something great. We are grateful for the opportunities provided to us and grateful for the blessings we as a city receive. Please bless us to be wise stewards of all that we are put in charge of. We are grateful for that guidance, and we ask a special blessing on the citizens of this great city, that they can be watched over and protected and be safe and prosperous. And this we pray in Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Jordan and Lisa. Council, I have a request in adopting the agenda. I would like to switch 5 and 6. I know that there are a number of people who are interested in some action that will take place in item 6 as it's listed here, and would like to have that action prior so that we may hear the comments of the public in relationship to that action.
5 is first currently. You want to put it after?
I want to move the approval of the minutes ahead of public comment.
I'm not sure I can agree with that, because I think that anything that is an actionable item, we should give them a chance to speak first before we take an action. In fact, for that matter, I'm wondering why it's not before public comment isn't before common consent, even though it's common consent, or even before. Yeah, I mean, we should be offering this public comment as an opportunity to comment on anything upcoming that we're going to take. So,
Council, I take your counsel.
I agree. I'd actually like to move public comment up to item number 4 instead of putting it after. That way we can receive the public's comments in advance of any votes we take.
Right.
yeah.
I can agree with that.
Right. Do I have another? That's 3. Let's move it. Let's move public comment then to ahead of between 3 and 4. All right. Okay. I would.
Need an agenda to adopt that, or
I would.
motion.
A motion. I would consider that a friendly amendment to go ahead and adopt the agenda with that change.
So moved.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, let that stand. Okay. We have a couple of recognition items we would like to do. Chief, do you want to come forward? And
Mayor, Council, thanks for giving me the opportunity to recognize one of our members tonight. Captain Nance, if you come up. Captain Kyle Nance has been awarded the Utah Supervisory Fire Officer designation as outlined by the International Association of Fire Chiefs and adopted by the Utah Commission on Fire Officer Designation. He's combined hundreds of hours of training, education, and experience to meet the requirements for this designation. His hard work and commitment to this process shows his dedication to not only the Utah Fire Service, but to Syracuse City and our department. I did a little bit of research in this, and since this has been in the state of Utah, there have only been 77 firefighters that have been given this designation. 7 of those 77 are out of our department, so pretty happy about that. So tonight, please join me in congratulating Captain Nance for attaining this designation. The commission has sent a plaque and also a pin for your uniform. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Captain. We appreciate your hard work, and we have the benefit of a great fire department within our community. And by the way, I might put a little plug in for Thursday night. If you've got time Thursday night, that's on the 10th, down at the fire station, beginning at 6 o'clock. We'd love to invite you down there with your family, and it's a great thing for little boys, big little boys. You there? Corinne, would you like to recognize the pageant people?
Yes. I'm wondering, do you want me to stay here or go there?
Whatever you'd like to do.
Okay. It's been my pleasure to be the liaison for the Syracuse Miss Syracuse pageant, and I just want to read a couple of thoughts I wrote down. These fabulous ladies are just amazing, and everything that they do is very professional, from their invitations to their backdrops. I'm not a frilly person, so I'm amazed how well coordinated and how wonderful it all comes together beautifully. So, not that they're frilly, but how do I put that? Very professionally, excuse me. So Syracuse, anyway, they celebrate the young women of this community, and we want to thank them for how they've changed the program from where it began, in helping these young ladies serve our community and also then display their wonderful talents and show what we have and what a blessing we have of these young ladies. The momentum of the pageant is palpable. It's very apparent that Syracuse is doing it correctly. I've had reports from my family that live in Cache Valley that there weren't even enough contestants in many cities to even hold a pageant in many of their small towns, where that has been a very huge tradition. I grew up there, I should know. So I am just thrilled that Syracuse is building. We had more contestants than ever before and superb talent. When I wrote the report to the council, I used that word like 3 times, and it was amazing. I just really enjoyed it. So we look forward to supporting you for years to come. And now we have some certificates. Yes, no? I'm not sure if we did this year, but can you please all come up?
Come up
this
and
year
let
to
us.
be
Thank you.
recognized. We have Shelley Thorne and her committee, and they're amazing. So let's give them a round of applause today.
Brody, it is getting a little warm in here. Is there a...
Did you hear me under my breath? Is it 100 degrees in here?
we like to, we love to recognize our volunteers. You notice we didn't do that for the fire department because they're not volunteer. And, but we're so grateful for both of these services in our community. Once a year, we need to hear a report from our Justice Court. Brody, would you bring us up to date with that?
Sure. If you all remember this document that we worked on last December and the council adopted, as a refresher, we had a vision statement regarding our Justice Court. The vision statement was the Syracuse City Justice Court is administered fairly. And part of that, part of the steps that we planned on taking to ensure that was to have better dialogue with our judicial representative, Judge Catherine Hoskins. She's our Justice Court Justice. Our Justice Court Judge, and what we specifically talked about was having an annual report at least, or perhaps maybe even a semi-annual report from Judge Hoskins. So we've spoken with her, and she's been gracious enough to come and just report to you and just open up the lines of communication with you. If there's any, this is a good time if there's any issues or questions that you have regarding the Justice Court. You could ask those to her. So we'll invite Justice Hoskins to come on up and she can speak with you.
It's such a privilege to be here. Would it be okay if I do a little bit of speaking and then if you have some questions for me? So it's been a while since I've been here, but just a little bit of background because there's some familiar faces. So I was appointed to Syracuse City in September of 2014. So I've been here for about 5 years, and Syracuse City appointed the first female Justice Court judge in Davis County, and I'm the only Justice Court judge that's a female north of Salt Lake. So we have the only one, which I think that's pretty impressive for us that, and I mean, we're in Davis County, that's kind of silly that we had to have the first one, but we still have them, and I think it's important for us to realize that Syracuse did that. So, and every year every 6 years I have to get retained. And so as part of my retention process, I'm evaluated by a neutral thing and then the citizens vote. And so I had the highest retention of any judge in Davis or Weber or Morgan County, which is the 2nd district, and I think I was number 3 statewide for retention levels. So I think that's also something about our Justice Court. So there's kind of 3 areas I want to talk about. 1 was the background, 2 is what we do it, and 3, why we do it. So as part of our Justice Court, we have some amazing staff. I'm so happy with Paul, who, as you know, is a great city attorney, but he's also a great prosecutor, and then I have 2.5 clerks. And the reason I have a half clerk is she is a fully functioning, but we're part-time just to kind of fit the needs. Our Justice Court is open 9 to 5, and then we have court on Wednesday mornings, which is when people come in before me. Even though I'm only on the bench for approximately 3 hours, during the rest of the week, I'm following up with jail arraignments. I'm reviewing PC statements. That stands for probable cause. Anytime someone is arrested in Syracuse City for a B or a C misdemeanor, I have 24 hours to do it. So that means I do it on Christmas, I do it on Sundays, I do it on the 4th of July, and then I follow up. And there's been times that I've released people and the jail hasn't released them or they haven't done what they were supposed to. So I've gone and had meetings with the jail to make sure, because part of, I think, my job is to make sure that nothing is happening that Syracuse City could be in trouble from a civil standpoint on releasing inmates, and that we're making sure that we're going through that process. In addition to that, my clerks and I and the prosecutor also regularly go through trainings. As a Justice Court judge, I'm required to do a certain number of continuing legal education, and that's done by the state, but I also go to additional ones. So last year, I spoke at the International Association of Women Judges Conference in Argentina, and I was probably one of 10 judges from the United States that spoke, and I got to talk about technology in Utah and how amazing our court system is. And so for those types of things, I apply for grants or I pay for it from my own budget, because I think that's important. The city pays for my mandatory education, but anything over that I think is beneficial, I either get a grant or I pay for, because I think it's good for the citizens. I'm also constantly reading audit reports and seeing what's happening nationwide so that I can make sure that we're on the forefront. And I can tell you, Utah and Syracuse are doing exactly what needs to be, and we're on the forefront of technology, looking at mass incarceration, trying to decrease recidivism. Anytime my clerks have problems, they'll call me. We're doing releases. We get family members to try and make sure that we're keeping the system going. And even though I'm not actually in the chair, that I'm still easily accessible, and that I'm making sure that really you have me on call 24/7. Because every day I have to get that done. And if I don't get that done within 24 hours, then Syracuse is on the hook. And that's not what I want to happen, nor is that what Syracuse wants to happen. It's also, I think, important is my role is that this isn't just a part-time job. This is something, I'm a community representative. So I make sure that I sit on community boards. I sit on boards as a justice court judge to make sure the education and the training, and I do more. I also, up until this year when Paul got the benefit, I always have a high school student that interns with me. And so they come and they do the intern, and then I also volunteer at Constitutional Day, and I'm actually working on a program to try and get a driver's ed, Law 101, put in the high schools, and so then I would go to Syracuse High and we would talk about that, because I think it's important that they do it, and we kind of talk to the high school students and we say, look, this is what happens if you get these types of charges. I've also gone and I've talked to our youth court, because I think it's important that they know what we're doing. So the types of cases we have are small claims, DUI, DV, traffic tickets, and we get a wide range. Why is it important to have a justice court? Well, it's not necessarily a money maker. I think if you look at us financially, we're about breaking even. But it's important because we are able to meet the needs different than if we were to send them to Salt Lake or to Farmington. There's just different things that happen. So I'd like to tell a slightly humorous story that happened. One day I had a defendant come in front of me, and they were charged with a dog at large. And I went through the requirements and I said, how do you want to plead? And they're like, not guilty. I said, okay, do you want to speak with our prosecutor? And Mr. Roberts has done an excellent job, but we're always trying to rework the process, get people in and out as quickly, make sure it's efficient so they're not waiting. And a lot of times he will see people the same day. So we've got very good things on getting them in and out and keeping it moving. So they go over and they meet with Mr. Roberts, and he comes back and he says, I'm going to dismiss the charges. Would you like to know what happened? And he had this smile on his face that normally we're very businesslike. And I said, sure, tell me what happened. He says, well, it's not really a dog at large. I said, well, what is it? He says, it's more of a guinea hen at large. And you could tell everyone got out their smartphones and they're like, what's a guinea hen? So everyone's Googling guinea hens. And he said, what happened is these people decided they wanted to raise guinea hens. So they went and they bought 2 or 4 guinea hens. And then the guinea hens got loose. And then the PUD that they were living in wasn't happy that the guinea hens were loose, so they kept calling animal control. Well, there's not really a statute on loose guinea hens anywhere. So the animal control didn't know what to do, and they're like, well, there's dog at large, dog, guinea hen, so they sent them into court. So Mr. Roberts was able to take the time and kind of focus, and I was able to, make sure we had the time to do it. So Mr. Roberts then looked at me, so in essence, Your Honor, it's really a case of mistake hen identity. So I said, yes, it is, Mr. Roberts. So my dad is the king of all puns. And so I went home, or I called my dad, and I said, Dad, what happened? I told him what happened. He's like, well, did you look at your prosecutor and say that was a foul attempt at humor? And I'm like, no, Dad. No, he says, did you say we don't appreciate foul jokes in this courtroom? I run a serious courtroom. I'm like, no, I didn't, Dad. He says, did you at least say that was a poultry attempt at humor? I'm like, no, Dad, I didn't. Then I told Mr. Roberts these stories, and he said to me, it's because you were chicken, huh? I said, yes. But those exemplify kind of what happens. We get our more serious charges, and then we get some of these charges that we have to be able to focus on it. They can't fit into a specific box. At the end of the day, we're a justice court. And I heard a story from Judge Oley, who was a judge in Alabama. In 1958, he's African-American, and he was in high school. And he saw this book in the library, and he thought, I want to read this book. It had kind of a risque cover, but he didn't want his friends to know he was reading. So he put the book inside of his jacket. And a week later, he came back and he noticed there was another book by the author. And so for the next year, about 5 times, he would take a book and replace it. 15 years later, he went back to his high school reunion. And he said, he saw the teacher, the librarian, and he says, I was stealing the book. She says, oh, I saw you stealing them. He's like, you did? She says, yeah, I looked at him and I thought, boy, those books are free. Why are you taking it? And then I realized that he's taking it because he's too embarrassed to read it. And so the other librarian and I would drive 140 miles each way to Memphis, and we would make sure that there was another writer that you liked, and we would put it in that same shelf. And she says, let me tell you, getting black writers during the civil rights movement in Southern America was not easy to come. And I think that's the purpose of justice. We've got carrots and we've got sticks, and it's trying to balance it. And so I feel like Mr. Roberts and I do a really good job of looking and saying, okay, when is it, yes, they stole the book, but where are we going to go? And this judge says the reason I became a judge is because she got that love of learning. And so you have these librarians that they realized what was happening and saw the broader picture. Now, sometimes clearly there needs to be harsh sanctions, and there needs to be. At our crimes like DUIs and domestic violences, we need to take those seriously. But on the flip side, the majority of the citizens that come in front of me, they're people that have made a mistake, and we need to look at all the factors. And my end goal is to get recidivism down and make it that if it was someone, this is a one-time anomaly. It doesn't happen again. Does anyone have any questions? I probably went a little over on time, so I apologize.
I'd just like to say that it was clear that Mr. Roberts and your father are birds of a feather.
Yeah, I would say something witty, but I always think about it like 10 minutes after we leave. So can I call back the council and be like, oh, I've got the best pun ever to add to this? My dad would say he's the punny one in the family, but I can't do puns.
Email them, we'll take them anytime.
Does anyone have any questions, or do they know anything else that we do?
Council, anything else?
I just want to say thank you for taking that approach and, balancing the carrots and the sticks, because a lot of people have bad days, and sometimes they need a break. And so thank you for being able to balance both of those, both the carrot and the stick.
It is such a privilege to serve here. The first thing I did after I got appointed on this position is I got my law merit badge. And so we've had numerous Boy Scout troops come in, and that's the only time my gavel really gets used, is when they all want to just beat the crap out of it. But it's the citizens, and it's having Boy Scouts come, and it's teaching about what a great community we live in. And we do. We live in an awesome community with really good people.
I'd like to say I've been in a justice court before that was far busier, and one of the biggest things that I realized was how harmful it was to those the people who are accused of crimes, who had to spend their entire day waiting to be heard, which meant that they were taking more time off work, which was already an issue for them, which probably led to them being fired, which probably led to them not having enough money to pay their bail or their fees. And I saw it as a really vicious cycle, which no program is perfect, but I love the idea that we can have. I read through all of the things that you've written in this report, and I love the idea that there is an easier schedule for them to keep to, with it being so close. You aren't just at the mercy of whatever that day brings, and that they can have less time spent waiting around. And I do love the intimacy of something close to home, where you can understand what's going on with the community, and maybe what's going on with the people who are accused or have been struggling with things. So I appreciate your insights and your efforts and your attitude.
And I think we do. We're constantly revamping. The prosecutor, defense counsel, and I will hold meetings. How can we make the schedule better? What can we do to get people in and out? And I really can't tell you how much I applaud that Mr. Roberts will see people the same day. Because a lot of the crimes aren't necessarily crimes of that they're trying to commit a harm. They're in a social situation where it just keeps compounding on it. And so getting them back to their jobs makes so much more sense. And they say that people are much more able to take their sentence if they're able to tell their side of the story. And so making it that they feel like they can tell it, and that's the other reason to have a justice court. People can come in and we can take the time to hear their story, and they can explain, like the guinea hen, that there are some times that weird things happen, or there are extenuating circumstances. There was a child in the emergency room that we need to be able to look at it. We had a high school student came in, and she hadn't made her fine, and we came in to find out that she'd been having some mental health issues, and so she'd had to be institutionalized. Well, clearly that's something we needed to take the time and to address, and I feel like we do a great job of that.
Sounds like you take what's a bad day and make it a more pheasant experience.
We do that. So that means I've set the precedence for the rest of the night.
Yeah.
Thank you for being such a great service to our citizens. We really appreciate
Thank you. It's such an honor.
May I make a request too, that our city is served by 2 high schools, And if you do something, also maybe a little sensitive to the Clearfield students that are here.
So, thank you for that clarification. The person that does it, she always does both of them. I just mentioned Syracuse because I just thought it, but I always actually have two. I have a Syracuse and I have a Clearfield one. I just didn't quite realize that, but no, I get 2 interns every semester. I get Syracuse and I get Clearfield, and so I should have thought of that, but I was just thinking Syracuse in my mind. So yes, we do Clearfield as well, and I've always had 2 interns, so I get 1 from each one.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
May I be excused?
Yes. Yes. Thank you, Judge. We really appreciate your efforts here in the city. You're great. Well, the council has moved the public comment to this point. Let me make just a little statement before we begin. We are ruled by Robert's rules as a rule that we have adopted. We would invite you, if you would like to address the council on any issue that you think is important for us to know, if you'd come forward to the podium here and state your name and place of residence. We'd love to hear from you. We'd ask you to limit your comments to 3 minutes so that we can manage the meeting. So I'll now open this for public comment.
Mayor, City Council, thank you for having this public comment. And thank you for answering my emails that I sent. My name is Doug Dahl. I'm a South Weaver resident currently, but I always call my home Syracuse. And I'm commenting today on behalf of the Dahl family. The Dahl family is interested in selling some property on 1700 South, just up the road a quarter of a mile. Now, the Dahl family's been honorable citizens for a long time in Syracuse and some of the early descendants of this great city. Over 20 years ago, our family sold some property up the road for single dwellings, single housing dwellings. But the frontage of that property was zoned commercial use. And in hopes, the city hoped that commercial use would benefit the city in drawing commercial business in here. But it hasn't. We all know for the last 20 years there's been very little commercial business between 1,000 and 2,000. This has left a tax burden, a commercial tax burden on the Dahl family for many, many years. A recent IBI study also said that this property that we're interested in selling would be great for residential use, for mixed high residential use. And so the Dahl family is strongly encouraging, as you look at the agenda today on item number 11, that you really look at the mixed use rezoning for this property and quickly rezone that. We respectfully encourage you to do that today. We've been working with the city for several years, and I know there's been some progress, but to us it seems like it's been very little progress. So thank you for listening to my comments.
Thank you, Doug. Anyone else?
Hi, my name's Wendy Dahl. He's my better half, I guess, and I'm also from South Weaver, and thank you for this opportunity as well. I sent this email yesterday or the day before, I don't remember, to the city council and mayor, and I do appreciate also those who responded and read. And I will just read my email that I sent because I'm not sure everybody got it or wanted to hear it. So I'm also speaking concerning the Dahl property and proposed development located on 1700 South, which is currently zoned commercial. I'm urging you as a council voted in to consider the concerns of all citizens to open-mindedly consider the following and change this zoning from commercial to mixed-use development. For the past 20 years since the city zoned this property commercial, the owners have had to pay the higher commercial taxes on their land, and due to many reasons, there has been no interest in commercial development of this property, nor any foreseen interest. Opposite of other cities, Syracuse does not currently have a committee established to entice commercial developments to help citizens in this matter. According to the Syracuse City General Plan Vision, 92% of Syracuse is single-family homes. The city wants to provide a wide range of housing options, and the city is aware of changing housing markets. Diverse housing options should be added to the city. Even many established households nowadays are desirous to downsize and simplify their living spaces. Without some of these housing options being adopted, the city may not be able to afford the level of service to its residents in the future, which will result in higher taxes for all families. We realize that the loudest voices in the city against this development are from those who still appreciate the single-family home options, as do we. However, I would like to ask a question. How many of these families themselves were able to purchase a single-family home dwelling immediately after marriage? It feels a bit selfish not to allow our children and future residents of the city a chance to live in and contribute to a great community, and as they work for and try to achieve their dreams. Doug and I were actually part of this. We lived in Syracuse as a newly married couple in the Gailey townhomes down from Syracuse, and what a blessing that was to our beginning of our marriage life. Please also consider this. The approval of the development, this development we're talking about, falls directly in line with the IBI study, with the Syracuse City Vision, with the Envision Utah Directive from the state of Utah, and the Syracuse City Planning Commission's multi-use ordinance. As a council voted in by citizens, the directive is to listen to all sides, consider all options, and make the best decisions for the betterment of the city and the community, regardless of the loudest voices or of your own personal desires or opinions. Understanding that the task of your position is difficult, we ask that you consider the studies, the plans, and help us come up with the best solutions for all. Thank you for your time. Respectfully.
Thank you, Wendy.
Thank you, Wendy.
Are there others?
I apologize. I may not look all that good.
You
Got
are.
off the operating table today, so. Anyway, I would like, Terry Palmer, Syracuse resident, and I would like to address this same issue. First off, I want to thank the mayor for this opportunity and council members. I personally was in favor of the RPC project. I want to let you know that because I don't mind higher density housing as long as it's done properly, with the idea that people would be moving into the city with the idea of owning. Recently, there was a survey done that determined what the average price of a home would be in all of the states within the United States, and Utah came in at about $350,000 per home. Now that is an expensive home, but somebody making $68,000 a year can buy that home. They can qualify to buy a home up to $350,000. We have plenty of homes that are under that. I know the old, trying to remember what the name was, but anyway, it has a requirement that 15% of people, you know, if they have to be able to qualify for a home that's poor or indigent, maybe not those qualifications there, but people who do not make as much money as the rest. And in Davis County, you know, Syracuse has a median household income of $88,000 or more. And so we do have a lot of people who can qualify for those type of homes. I would like to see, I'm not real excited about mixed use. I don't mind townhomes that are built. You can have 4 or 5 of them together, so I don't mind the higher density. But I believe that Syracuse, to keep our lifestyle and so forth, I believe in Syracuse here, if we can still target people who are willing to buy. I don't mind people who rent. I happen to be a landlord. I have rental homes and so forth, so I don't have a problem with renters. And I do believe that with a city of 3 square miles or 9 square miles, you know, that, you know, people are going to have to live outside the city. I want to thank the city for this opportunity to speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. Are there others? Yes.
Thank you. I'm not a member of Syracuse City, but I appreciate the opportunity to come here and talk to you for a minute. I'm a real estate broker in the state of Utah, and
Could you give us your name?
my name is Damon Bocchino. My partners and I purchased a property in your city on about 2700 West and 1700 South. And with the idea in mind that the property was zoned commercial, and well, one of the parcels was, the other parcel was zoned residential. However, in the general plan, it could also be zoned commercial, the residential part. So my partners were looking at go ahead to move that to commercial zone. About a couple months after we purchased the property, we've been talking with some of your planners and discussed our options, and found that there was, in our opinion, minimal options as far as what we really wanted to do with that property. We looked at townhomes, but they are extremely expensive, and we can only get so many on our property. So I'm a proponent for this mixed use proposition. One is, I believe that it will bring more tax dollars to your city. Two is, I make my living at real estate. I've been doing it for 30 years. And I know what homes cost. And whether people can qualify or not, I don't think that's the issue. I think the issue is what is best for your city. And I look at many cities in this state, and they have adopted these zones primarily to allow people who cannot afford more expensive homes to have a nice place to live. And so in this zone, I think that would be a wonderful thing for people who can't afford $1,800 a month, but they can afford $1,200 a month. And these would be nice places to live. So I appreciate the opportunity to come before you and voice my opinion. I just thank you for the opportunity for this.
Thank you, Damon.
Thank you.
Are there others?
Bonnie Burgess, 3008 South, 3000 West in Syracuse. Thank you, Mayor and council members, for listening. I know that there has been a lot of questions about the proposed recall or revote on the shoreline development, and just want to reiterate that, you know, nobody is opposed to growth. We just want smart growth to be sustainable growth and not to impede on the existing homeowners' rights. Most of the farms around there have animals. We just want to make sure that those animals are protected. So whatever you do today, make sure that you are not setting a bad precedent for future zoning and the use of the land, that you make sure you take care of the residents that are already here, and that when you recall a vote, that you consider those that have put in the time and effort that they did not want this in the first place, and the reasons why they didn't want it is because of protecting the property rights. And so make sure that whatever plan is proposed, that you ensure that those rights stay in place. Thank you.
Thank you, Bonnie. Are there others? Hearing and seeing none, I'll close public comment. Council, we're to item 4, our common consent. For the benefit of the public, the council meets in a work session on the 4th Tuesday of the month, and in past work sessions, we have worked the items A, B, C, D, and E, and item 4. I will list them and maybe say just a little bit about each of them so you understand Item number A, the proposed resolution R-1940 appointing Stacy Johnson as an advisor to our youth court. We've talked about the justice court that serves Syracuse. We also have a youth court where those that are of minor, the juveniles, can come before a youth court of their peers to be very, very effective. And we would like to appoint Stacy Johnson as an advisor to that youth court. Proposed resolution R-1941, the policy manual amendments, those have been reviewed by the council. These are policies that govern the staff. And we have reviewed that, and we would propose their approval tonight. Proposed resolution R-1942 requesting the recertification of the city justice court. As you heard our justice court judge report to us today, that 6-year period is up, and that needs to be recertified. And we have reviewed that in a work session and would recommend that to the city. Item D, proposed resolution R-1943 creating a voter participation areas in Syracuse City. This is a requirement of the county. This county, isn't it, Cassie? Of the state, where we have to. Do you want to say a little bit about that, Cassie, so that they know what we're doing? We're not creating new precincts right now in voting, but.
No, so it won't be in effect this year. It will go into effect for the next calendar year, and for any future election issues, initiatives, or referenda, those participation areas will be used to determine the number of signatures that petition sponsors are required to gather from each area of the city.
And what we're doing is calling out those geographies in this. So the council has reviewed that. Item number E, proposed appointment of the 2019 general election poll workers. Those are for those that will who will participate in the election that will happen in November. So, council, we have these on the agenda for common consent. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion.
I'll move that we approve the 5 items under the common consent agenda.
Thank you, Doug. Do I have a second?
Second.
Councilwoman Bingham, thank you. Any further discussion, council? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none. Cassie, would you mark that unanimous? Council, what I would like to do is I'd like to take the approval of our minutes one by one. I'd like to begin with work session of August 27th, 2019. You've had a chance to review those. Are there any comments to Cassie on those minutes? I'd entertain a motion.
Mayor, I make the motion that we approve the minutes of work session of August 27th, 2019.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second by Doug. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Cassie, show that one as unanimous. Item B, special meeting of August 27th of 2019. Any corrections in those minutes, council? I'd entertain a motion.
I
Move to approve.
I have a motion to approve. Have a second?
Second.
I have a second by Corinne. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Cassie, will you show that as unanimous?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
can I have a go back? I just want to make sure that something is clear. I just noticed as I was looking through the general election poll workers, I am related to one of those people, so if I need to recuse myself from that, I can. But I'm not in the election, so I don't think that's an issue.
Yeah, it's only if you were a candidate this
Okay.
time.
I want to make sure it was clear.
Thank you for that clarification. Appreciate that. Now, what I would like to do is talk a little bit. I'd like to maybe rehearse in my own mind a little civics lesson for the benefit of everyone who's here who may have been as dumb in this issue as I was 6 years ago. I'd like to talk to you a little bit about the minute that we're going to reconsider an item here in just a minute. Let me tell you a little bit about our charter. By the way, we do not function by way of a constitution. We have a charter. Our charter is issued by the state of Utah. We are a subdivision of the state of Utah, and our form of government is a strong council and a weak mayor. That's what I am. My job is to help keep these individuals organized and keeping us moving forward. I generally do not vote unless there is a tie, and I try to limit my opinion in business meetings. In work sessions, I'm a little more free with what I feel our opinion ought to be. Now, I don't know how many of you have sat at a computer. I'm going to give you 2 examples of how this works. If you sat at a computer in the last 2 or 3 weeks, you probably had a file or something you didn't want to keep anymore, or you didn't have any need to back it up, or there was no reason to encumber your hard drive with this file. So depending on whether you're a Mac person or depending on whether you're a PC, you either dragged it to a recycle bin or you took it to the trash, one of those 2 things. But that file was not really gone. That file was still on the hard drive. It required a second action, and that action was you had to either recycle the recycle bin or you had to empty the trash. It was a 2-pronged approach for something to be valid. I happen to have a concealed carry permit. I'm not carrying right now, Paul. I happen to have a concealed carry permit. I learned from the concealed carry course that I took that a handgun is not considered loaded with a round in the chamber. It would require, a gun is considered to be not loaded if it takes 2 actions to make it fire. That would mean pulling back the hammer and squeezing the trigger. If I just have 1 action, squeezing the trigger, then the gun is considered loaded. But if I have a round in the chamber and it is a single action, I have to draw the hammer back and I have to squeeze the trigger, 2 actions. The same is true of the city. Any decision that is made here in the city, the decision is called for in a vote, and you've seen 2 or 3 or 4 of those this evening. The council votes. The action is then taken for the mayor's signature if it's a resolution or an ordinance change or any of those kinds of things. But the official record, and it is not fully functional without a second action. And that second action is the vote of the approval of the minutes. Now here in a minute, I'm going to call for a vote for the minutes of the September 10th meeting, where at that time we considered a subdivision called Shoreline, which has been mentioned here before, and at that time the vote was 3-2 to not approve that subdivision. Now, I have done my best as the mayor. If a council person has called me and said, I'd like to put a specific item on the agenda, can I do that? I've tried to accommodate that. It might have not have been in the immediate agenda, in the immediate meeting, but I've tried to accommodate with these 5 that are here. I am obligated to do so if any 2 of them, of the council members, call and want something on the agenda. There's been some work done since the September meeting by the developer in meeting with the landowners down in that area to see what it is that they really would like to see down there. From initiative from landowners down there and initiative from the developer, and I want to thank Jordan and Doug for being involved in that and meeting with those landowners. There is a motion before me to place on the agenda of a point of reconsideration of that vote to deny that application and bring it back so that it could be worked on more, so that it can be modified more, so that the concept plan that was presented the concept that was presented in January can be modified to meet the needs of the existing residents that are down there. Councilman Savage and Councilman Peterson have both approached me and asked me to put this on the agenda. I'd like now to defer to Councilman Savage. Would you go forward with what you'd like to talk about?
Sure, because I'm sure many people are wondering why we're actually taking this course of action. And as I've stated both on social media and to many people that have asked me about this, is why would we reconsider this one? As of last month, I was not okay with the development as it was presented. It did not address the needs of the neighbors. It did not, its density was not as well organized as I would have liked. And all in all, I didn't feel it was a good fit for the city. And so at that point, it didn't seem like there was enough progress being made. And so instead of going for the table approach, it just looked like we weren't going to get there from where we were. And so we recommended denial at that point. And a few weeks ago, the some people from the developer, they texted me and said, hey, we'd like you to come down and look at a new plan. And I actually straight up told them, I'm like, you know what, I think you are pushing this too fast. 2 weeks ago, you had picketers on a sidewalk against this. And unless you have radically made something different, I don't think this is a good idea. I think you need to let this go for a while and reconsider. And he said, well, just come down and see what's changed. And so I actually, they had an open house, and I went to that open house, and I actually didn't go to the open house to talk to the developer. I went strictly to talk to the neighbors that were also at that open house. And I spent most of the time at that open house talking to the neighbors and asking them, okay, there's a new plan, what do you think? As I understand it, the new plan is primarily a mix of R1, R2, and R3. Gone are the 3,500 square foot lots. If I'm saying anything wrong, I'm sure the developer will correct me. And he's also worked with the existing neighbors to make sure that the density near those neighbors is along the same lines as their densities. And I am actually quite impressed with the work he's done, with the work the developer's done. I know they've put a lot of time into this. I really am grateful for developers in this city. I think it's the developers that help build this city. I know that they get a lot of bad press, and I think there are some bad developers out there. But I also think there's some really good ones. And the ones that are willing to work with the citizens of this community, I'm willing to give them the opportunity to do so. And for that reason, we brought this forward. I think this is a good opportunity to go back and say, you know, they proved me wrong. They were willing to work with our city and work with the citizens. And for that reason, I'm recommending that we reconsider the minutes of this next set of minutes for September 10th. And what I will propose is, as we do this, we reconsider it, and instead of an approval, which I'm not willing to do, I would recommend as we go through, we actually propose a tabling until the developer can present a full plat that meets all of our guidelines. I know the one he had was somewhat of a rough sketch. I think there's still work to be done, but I think there is a path from here to there.
Let me stop here just a minute, and Doug, would you mind commenting?
Yeah, so I can echo pretty much everything Jordan said and just boil it down to this, that I voted against this as well a few weeks, 2 or 3 weeks ago, and when I went to the open house, not only did I see residents that were more pleased with the work and the compromise that the developer had done, but I saw a plan that was vastly changed. If this was just a little bit of change, I wouldn't be willing to reconsider, but there were enough changes that this is a big deal. I also, with reconsidering this, don't want to just blanket say yes to something that the whole council hasn't seen yet. So I'm with Jordan in saying I will reconsider this, but I want to table it and give us time to be fair and look at it.
Let me state a little bit about what the law requires. The law requires a motion to reconsider that one of 3 members of the council that voted to deny the application the last time we met, a motion has to come from one of them. Now, Jordan, did you make, was that a motion that you made before, or would you like to clarify it, or is there Dave or any of?
I think I stated a motion in my comments.
Okay, so I'll accept that as a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
If I may,
yes.
I was the other member that voted with the majority, so I would be the other one affected by the decision, and I would appreciate the opportunity to address some of my concerns.
Yes, the discussion is open.
So,
but we do have a motion and a second, so this is...
That's fine. I want to work with developers. I want them to understand that the cooperation is what's going to make things work. I'm a little concerned that you've both just stated that the developer reached out to you and that a lot of changes were made and they worked with you, but as I've stated publicly, all 5 of us receive comments from different people in different parts of the city. We're kind of spread out across the city. So that means that we hear different concerns and different things. I would expect that cooperation should include all of the council. And until today, I had zero effort by this developer to communicate with me outside of meetings, and yet he spent a lot of time trying to communicate with a few of you. And to me, that says that maybe it's not important what all of the citizens think, but maybe just the voting members. And that concerns me. Now, with due respect, this morning I got a message from the developer, so I appreciate that phone call. I do want to share what citizens have said their concerns are, but I do my best to get back to people within 24 hours. It's not even been 24 hours. So that would be my second concern. This particular item has been tabled, put off, rearranged on the schedule several times because it wasn't prepared for the agenda. So that even came up as from citizens last night was, is this too long of a process? Well, we're not the only stewards of the process. If it doesn't come forward, it doesn't come forward. I can only deal with what's on the agenda. So I think that this is a message not just to one developer, but to all. I think that you have a responsibility to present information with enough time for all of the council to digest that and be prepared for meetings. So that means that if you have to have things in the Thursday night before a Tuesday meeting, which is our standard for publishing, then it needs to be there. And nobody should be sending stuff out the day of a meeting as major revisions and saying this needs to be considered right before you vote. Because with respect to all of our time, this is not our first job. We all have other jobs. We all have other responsibilities. And this service requires that we give some time to due diligence. So I'm going to ask that if we take this path forward, that whatever we do going forward, there is at least a minimum time given, and it's set up in our documentation. We expect things by the Thursday before. That's not too much of a big deal. And I'm going to expect that everyone in the council hears from the plan.
I would like to say that all of this was in the packet, and whether or not a developer reaches out to us is their choice. It is not mandated or required in any sort of
In this circumstance,
situation.
the open house was open to the public, but perhaps it didn't. It wasn't as well advertised as it could have.
But
This
yeah,
is a
I read
motion
this
to
on-
reconsider. This is not a
Right.
motion for us.
And all of that was in there on Thursday, so to reconsider.
But
So
no,
I'm
I
just
agree that we
clarifying.
need
I'm
time.
not talking about this motion. I'm
I'm-
talking about in the past, when the meeting that we heard this, there were
Okay.
changes that were suggested that very day.
So I'm just clarifying for the public that that was the case for now, because you've talked
Well, I
about
don't
other
want it to be
situations as
misled,
well.
but I was saying something other than what I was, and that is when we have meetings and packets, it needs to be prepared.
Any other discussion? Lisa, any?
No, I actually haven't been corresponding back and forth with the developers, so I don't have a problem with who they choose to speak to and what they present to us. That's up to them, and it can be voted up or down accordingly. So I think that we have to be very careful about the regulatory talk here. If they get it in the packet in time to be published, then it's in the packet in time to be published. It's up to us to read it. It's up to us to check the information daily, and they'll be held accountable to the standard that they set for themselves.
But I actually do agree with Dave. At the previous meeting, we have had developers send us last-minute adjustments, and it does. I would almost say that I can't really consider that because I have not had time to talk to the people I represent. And so I actually agree with Dave on this one, that we would request any developers bringing us items, please give us enough time that we can reach out to our constituents, we can consider it, and really make sure that when we vote, we're making an informed decision, not just something we've seen for a few hours. And I think that's just a good general recommendation for everyone.
And I think that's great. It's a recommendation, a request, and that's as it should be.
So I have a motion before us to reconsider that decision and then to table with what, and allow due process that Dave is calling for. So that is the motion before us.
Yes.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed?
Nay.
Records show that Councilman Mon opposed that. Okay. Now, council, let's go back to our minutes. We still need to approve those minutes. The minutes will not be changed. They will show the denial of that application, but tonight's minute will show that it was reconsidered and reopened to be tabled this evening, not spoken of this evening, but then under normal course of action within the city, a new concept plan to be presented and advertised, and with the hope that the residents would be involved in that process. So I will now take a motion to adopt the minutes of September 10th, 2019.
So moved.
I have a first. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Lisa. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Cassie, will you show that as unanimous? Thank you. Let's move to item number 7, authorize administration to award the bid for the culinary and secondary water tanks. Robert, do you have this one?
So we have bid out the contract for the secondary and culinary water main transmissions. These are the main lines that go to the tank. Part of it is also reconfiguring the line that used to go to the culinary tank that will now, that will now go to the secondary reservoir for that conversion. And since we're working in 1000 West on these mains, we have some some sewer service laterals on 10 homes on Syracuse, the west side of the street in Syracuse City, that currently are connected to Clearfield City's sewer main. Since we're working there, we figure we will switch those over to the North Davis Sewer District main. So that's the scope of the project. We did get 6 bids on this. The low bidder was from Leon Polson Construction Company at $937,000. So that does fall within budget, and that's laid out among 2, 3, 4, 5 of these funds, mostly capital funds and culinary impact. So,
Jordan, would you like to lead out on this discussion? Then we'll go back to Lisa and come down the line.
Sure. I think it's said best when, your city can have a lot of problems, but if you have a problem getting water to the community, you only have one problem. I was kind of curious as I was reading this. So to whom do these 10 Syracuse City residents pay sewer fees?
So their sewer bill goes to Clearfield City. Clearfield City actually bills them just for sewer.
Separately.
Now, whether they pay it or not, right, they have no mechanism to enforce it like we do.
Yeah.
But
sounds like it's good to bring them in.
But their costs, they're actually paying $5 more a month to pay to Clearfield City than if they were to pay for Syracuse City. So as trying to be fair for all residents in the city, they're kind of, they're paying Clearfield City's higher rates.
And I had no problem with this. I think this is something we need to do to make sure that we can accurately provide this water to our community. Accurately is the right word, efficiently. And so I think this is, I'm glad we had so many people bidding. I think we had a lot of good bids, and I'm glad we're able to get one that's affordable.
Thank you, Jordan. Lisa?
I agree, and I was glad to see that we've worked with this company before and that they've been good to work with. So I am glad that they bid so low compared to the high bid. So that was great.
Thank you, Lisa. David?
Nothing. Everything's been said. This is obvious. Don't want to waste your time.
Great job. Looks good.
Thank you. Doug?
Let's do it.
Okay. I'd entertain a motion to award that bid.
I'll move that we authorize administration to award the bid for this job to Leon Polson Construction.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilwoman Bolduc. Any further discussion, council? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Cassie, would you show that as unanimous? Steve, would you come and update us a little bit on the consolidated fee schedule?
I'll take that one.
You'll take that one, Brody?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we've discussed this in previous meetings. This is the $5 door hanger fee for shut off of culinary water due to non-payment. This action tonight is just to formally amend the fee schedule.
Okay. Now, anytime we deal with the city residents' money, we have to have a public hearing. And this is a change in the notice of water shutoff. That's what we're talking about here. So I now declare that we're in public hearing, and we would love to hear from anybody who would like to address this issue regarding the fee schedule as has been modified. Hearing and seeing none, I'll close public hearing. Council? Lisa, would you like to lead us off with this discussion?
We've discussed this quite a bit. We didn't want to make this fee prohibitive for the people trying to make up the money that they're behind on their payments. But we decided not to have it be something that could be rescinded. We wanted it to be
Rescindable.
Thank you.
I mean,
we were all agreeing that $5 is very doable, and it just makes sure that it can help pay for what the cost of sending someone out is.
Thank you, Lisa. David?
I actually think it doesn't actually pay for the cost of it, but it doesn't matter. It's just a fee that we've agreed to, so I'm okay.
All right. Corinne?
I just wanted to thank everyone for being willing to put on this, that it's non-negotiable, because it is really a problem for the staff if they have to be the arbitrator at the desk, and I think it's appropriate and a good amount.
Doug?
Nope, I'm ready to do this one as well.
Jordan? I'd entertain a motion.
I move that we, that we resolve R-1944, amending Syracuse City Consolidated Fee Schedule.
Do I have
Second?
I have a second and a first. Any further discussion, council? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Essie, would you record that as unanimous? Okay. Noah, are you with us?
Ready. Okay, Edgewater Park preliminary plat. This is a development that proposes 51 lots. It's 12 acres. It's located on Bluff Road. The applicant for the preliminary plat is Monterey LLC. He's here in the audience right there. I'm sure he'll be happy to answer any questions you have about his project. It's been through Planning Commission. They're forwarding a recommendation for approval. They did have some recommendations. They were listed in the packet. They're all kind of relatively detailed things, but he has submitted all of those things. You may have noticed that yesterday there were some things that I added to Dropbox, but they were in relationship to the hydrant location and the turning radius and the sign locations. And those are things that will be in the final plat if he gets there. And the other thing that was a comment from Planning Commission is about the elevations. The development agreement had been modified so that there could be some new elevations if the project gets sold to a new builder, that he would provide those, and that clarifying that they are theme elevations. They're not exactly what will be built, but something similar, just indicating kind of the look and feel of the project. Last time we talked about 2 pickleball courts versus 1 pickleball court. That's also been added to the development agreement as an option. If the neighboring property does develop, they could use their second access through there. But if it doesn't, then would be limited just to 1 court, because they would need that secondary fire access. I think that pretty well covers it. If you have any questions, let me know. Developers there.
Thank you. We discussed this in a work session, but we deferred it here to make a decision tonight. Councilwoman Bullock, would you like to start us off?
Yes, first of all, I want to just say thank you for trying to address all of the staff comments, and they look really good. I only have one question on a couple of the placements of the signs. Hang on. But I can talk to you about that afterward if this is not part of in the plat today. So I'll talk to
By the way, counsel, if you'd
Okay.
like the applicant, you can summon him forward if you'd like.
Okay. And I know that all of their sign placements are done to national standards, so I'm not terribly worried. But I also appreciate all of the themes. They look really good. The elevations are really nice, and I'm excited to see that good quality product there.
Okay. Dave, let's go back to you, and then we'll come back into Doug.
I don't think there's much to say here. It looks like what we talked about, and I don't want to beat a dead horse.
Okay. Doug?
Yeah, I appreciate everything being addressed that the planning commission said, the council said, the staff said. It's all been addressed. I think we're ready to go.
Doug? Or Jordan?
I also appreciate them making those updates. So I went through and looked at them, and they were all in there. I believe there's an organization that would prefer you say that we don't feed a dead horse, as clarification to Councilmember Vaughn.
Don't do that either. Okay.
We don't feed dead horses. We never would beat a horse.
Paul, do you have a comment?
I'm at a loss for
You're at a
words.
loss for words.
But no, thank you to the developer for working with us to get all these things put together and in such a way that this should be a very nice addition to our community.
Lisa, do you have any?
I thought it looked beautiful, and I appreciate all the work you've done on it as well.
Mr. Prince, thank you. I'd call for a motion.
Mayor, I make a motion that we approve the preliminary plat for 2950 South Bluff Road.
Do I have a second?
Second?
Second by Councilman Bingham. Any other discussion, council? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Cassie, would you record that as unanimous? Noah, let's go on. Ordinance 1916.
Okay. This proposed ordinance amendment has to do with the rules that we have relating to alcohol and location to parks and community locations like churches and things like that. More specifically, this was an application from Maverick Gas Station in our community. They applied and paid the fee and is requesting this so that it would enable them to sell beer at their location. And this is in relationship to what is called an off-premise beer sale. So it's packaged and consumed off-premise. It's not a bar, and so the proposed language is in the packet, and it basically says that when it comes to the location of those off-premise retailers, then we would follow the Utah state law concerning and it just, rather than copy the law and put it in our ordinance, we're just referring to it so that as it evolves and changes, we'll just have that link directly to the law instead.
Okay. Dave, would you want to lead us out?
So this is one that I did a lot of study on because, first off, I think it's easier at all times to match a higher authorities code. That means that when things need to be changed, then we're just matching that standard. It's more defensible if anybody does something. At the same time, just having experienced, done my graduate work in the South, where every county, every city has different alcohol laws that contradict each other right and left, I thought, well, okay, let's at least consider, is there any reason why we should be different here in Syracuse? But I really couldn't find one. I mean, I called some staff today. Actually, one called me and another I called, and I just said, look, I'm just trying to understand if there's anything I'm missing here. And it doesn't appear that we have any problems with the state standards. So I feel like the obvious thing is just to go along with the state standard and let that be up for discussion. If it becomes a problem, we'll have to address that. But for the time being, following the state standards seems to be the obvious rule, because there's been a lot. I mean, that makes us in harmony with everything else.
Yeah. Make a great argument, Dave. Corinne?
I appreciate this being brought forward, and I think it'll help our Maverick come into our demands of our population, and hopefully they'll expand.
Doug?
It's almost always a good idea to just mirror state code on things like this, and I'm with Dave. I see no reason not to in this case.
Okay. Jordan? Good. Lisa?
Same, I agree.
I'd entertain a motion.
I make a motion that we approve amend ordinance 19-16 and amending section 5.20.200 of the municipal code.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second?
Second by Councilwoman Bingham. Any further discussion, council? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Cassie, would you record that unanimous? Number 11, Noah.
Okay, creation of a mixed-use development zone. Just to be clear here, this is not being applied to any specific property here. This is literally just the rules. If for any specific property, once the ordinance exists, a landowner would have to apply to the city, and we would consider each application individually with its own individual characteristics of the property, whether or not the zone should be applied or not. So this is just the creation of the rules that would be applied. We've talked a lot about it, but the overall goal is to utilize the mixed-use zone to boost our job creation, boost our sales tax, and create architecturally compatible neighborhoods that are along those major corridors and in our town center that might be more urban, but also have more connectivity and well-designed open spaces. The ordinance has been in the packet since last time. The only change I added was concerning the location of density and how it's distributed. Before it said something to the effect of sensitivity to the surrounding density should be distributed with sensitivity to the surrounding development, and I think I added the word extreme sensitivity.
Thank you.
You bet. So yeah, that's we've had a lot of discussion. I'm willing to answer any questions or entertain any alternative changes or proposals.
I have a few things I'd like to just
Can I start with Doug, and then we'll move down?
Okay.
All right, I have liked the compromise and discussion we've had with this, because from the start I liked the idea. And for me, we've heard some comment, particularly from former Mayor Palmer, about apartments, and in some ways I feel the same as he does, but in others I don't. And I want, from my point of view, I want it clear that I don't think mixed use is about apartments. For me, it's about economic development. It's about job creation. It's the key word is the mixed part, the mixed use. And so it could include some higher density areas, but the thing that I like is that we have this in very limited areas along our corridors in our town center. The other thing that I like is the control, the say-so, the final approval that we would have as Planning Commission and Council in the final products that would go in these areas. And so I like what's proposed here, and I think it will benefit our city.
Thank you. Okay, Jordan.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
A few things that I would like, as I read through this for the gazillionth time, there was just a few little things I kept coming back to on this that I just wanted to get your opinions on. The first thing as I was going through, as I was looking at the list of amenity options, none of those really are grass. There's things like a community garden or a picnic pavilion or a rooftop deck, but none of it was a grassy area, unless we count the dog park. But not everyone wants to be in a dog park. There's nowhere in here to set anything down. So I want to consider two different things. The first thing, adding to the list of amenities, just a village, a grassy village center of some kind. That inside this little community there would be an area that someone can go toss a frisbee around, because this is going to be a higher density area along a major corridor that these people, they need some options. And so I would like, first of all, to add to the list of amenities, and I don't know the right word, whether it be a village green or something like unto it, but something where they can gather and just kind of play around. The second thing is, in every other higher density location in our city, we require 20% open space. This one we dropped to 15, and I still take issue with that. I would actually like to recommend that we push that back up to 20, just to align it with the other higher density areas in our city, but add the option that it can go towards improvements to a park in the immediate vicinity. You know, the same rule we have where it's within, say, I think it's a half mile that we have. So it's somewhere where these people can walk to and recreate, and we want to make sure that we improve that space for these people that are not going to have very many options. And you know, some of them may be just a bachelor or something like that, but still, I just want to make sure they have options, because families need places to recreate, and this is a higher density.
So are you proposing then that they could trade their whole 20%?
No, I would only be willing to do the last 5%.
Okay.
They would still need to do the 15 on premise. That last 5%, they could either add more into their development or put it in an adjacent park.
Mayor, do we want to go through everyone, or?
Let's go through everyone first.
I still have one more if I could.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, I want to hear from everybody first, and then I'll open it up to discussion.
Okay. I gotta go to the last one? Okay. The last one is, in this we have a picture of an example, and it says a design similar to the following image. And when I read that, it made it sound like it needs to be like this. And I don't know if anyone, if I was just off base, I would like it to say, instead of a design similar to the following image, say something to the example of, for example, something like the following image could be used. I want it to be even weaker than it is, because the whole point of this mixed-use development is they're going to bring us their imagination, their dream. We want to open this up in such a way that they can bring us something really interesting, that's an asset. And if we're limiting by saying, we want something like this, I think we're missing the point of the mixed use. This is, bring me a development that's awesome and is going to make people want to live there. But if it's just, if all of them look like this, that's not going to be what we want. Those are my comments.
Okay. Lisa?
Okay, so there's a lot to be said about it, but one thing that when we were at the Utah League of Cities and Towns meetings conference a few weeks ago, one of the classes that we went to showed some examples of some mixed-use developments, and one thing that they had done was set back off of the road, the actual development, commercial and housing, and the thing that greeted the people was this beautiful area that could have been a cafe bistro kind of an area, or a frisbee area, and not that you'd want that right on the road where you're throwing a frisbee into the road, but what it did was it was so inviting. And I think it's a great opportunity for us to have something that is a gateway into our city that says, this is who we are, this is how beautiful it can be. We're providing space for people who don't want the land or the homes, but it also addresses the need of the people who have the property that need to remove the burden of the taxes from them, and it allows the commercial base to come in because they will have the rooftops that they need to count for their demographics. But I think it can be a great opportunity for us to gateway into our city and show something beautiful rather than this is where our apartments are, or this is where our rentals are, or something that we tend to think of when we say mixed use. But really what we're saying is, here is an invitation into our city that we have made aesthetically beautiful, and it addresses needs and has amenities.
Thank you, Lisa. David?
I think you bring up a good point, because I too like and have favored some buffer zone green space towards some of these developments. It does make it more appealing in the city. So I'm in favor of that, but I'm also open to whatever somebody brings forward. Like Jordan, I think that it's really important that what we're saying with a mixed-use zone is bring us a suggestion that benefits the city, that shows us a mixed benefit, not just for the people who will live there, but for everybody. And as long as it does that, it would be considered. So I think that a mixed use has a lot of potential, and I'm in favor of it. A couple of things that I have a challenge with. I, like Jordan, also felt like we should stick to the 20% because that is consistent across the other developments that we have. So I would remain with that. I am not opposed to the idea that they could buy out of some of that in favor of supporting the local park that these people would, in fact, be using. So that same buyout I agree with. When it comes to the amenities, though, I felt like this document goes way too far. I think that when we're asking people to be more proposal-based rather than directed to exact things, we shouldn't have a list that is all-encompassing. We should probably narrow that down to a few. So when I was considering this, I was considering how would I pare this down to, so that I'm not trying to say that if it's not on this list, don't think about it as an amenity. And I thought, well, let's say which ones would we consider an amenity if there was only one? Because like some of this, I just could not imagine counting an amenity as something like Wi-Fi if there were no other amenities. That to me cheats the community. So I would take that off the list. I would take, but I would include, and I just for quick reference, I would include A, B, C, F, J, R, V, W, and X, if you want to look at those, because they're all larger, significant standalone amenities, things that I would consider representative of if there were only one amenity, this one would be acceptable. But I don't want to be all-inclusive, because I would take the rest off, because I really do think that they can come to us with what they think is an amenity for the type of development they're making, and we should consider it. I'm not saying it's a give me, but I don't want a list of ins and outs.
And I agree. I think like a charging station does not take the place of, say, a hot tub.
Yeah, well, it just by itself, a charging station for one car does not make an amenity for an entire complex.
Agree.
So that, to me, that's false advertising. So I would take those things off. To your point, when we get down to 6B.7 with the image, I just think that we ought to make that a may look similar to, not design will be, or similar to, I mean, let's make it a little looser, because like you said, I totally agree. It may look like this and it may be the perfect thing for that spot, but in somewhere else, the perfect thing is not this at all. So let's make sure that that's very loose in that interpretation. The last thing that I have a concern about is the density. I'm concerned that we've left, and I keep reading back for this, for where the hard density line is, and direct me to this, because I can't find where we landed. Is there a hard density line in this?
I don't think there
It
is.
was
It says lot width, no
form-based.
minimum or maximum.
That's what I thought. It is not. And so my concern based on that, because that's what I understood, was that this is not a hard set density. My concern is when we put permitted uses in here and we say multifamily up to 24 attached, suggests that maybe 24, that could for future be determined as 24 per acre, which if we're suggesting, now we also do not have a hard and fast number for how much mix between residential and other uses there is. But we did bat around the idea that there would maybe be somewhere in the idea of a minimum of 30%. If that were the case, then we're actually saying that this is up to, if that's only 24 attached, only makes up 2/3. Are we saying 32 units per acre is acceptable? I would say, and my point being not that that's the hard and fast number, but I don't want to lead people in the direction of drawing that conclusion. Because our other zones have not allowed such high density. I'm not saying that we won't consider other densities, but I don't want to lead people in the direction where we're going to actually quadruple anything we've allowed everywhere else in the city. I do think there are some standards, and we need to be careful not to lead people.
I agree. Are you wanting me to respond to?
No, I'm just suggesting to council maybe we take off anything that indicates an actual density, because we are open to consideration of the actual form, not giving some rules. That's just my take on how we better structure this. But I think we're close. So those are my thoughts.
Thank you, Dave. Corinne?
Okay. Like Lisa mentioned about attending the ULCT convention, there was a presenter who showed a bunch of 3D properties throughout the United States, cities, where their company has been asked to show in 3D form where the tax base is coming from that helps their city. And time and again, in almost every city, it was a mixed-use type of development. And he explained that the road in front of a single-family home, the road doesn't care that there's only one home. And it's going to cost the same whether it's in front of one home or in front of several. And he explained how those areas where you have a mixed use will pay for those areas that are more spread out, because you will be taxing at a different rate. So I just, if we can download that from YouTube, it's an awesome thing to watch. So it just really helped to explain this a lot better. Also, I do have just a comment about that 15% minimum. That is higher than any other community in Davis County, and more than national standards. And so I'm concerned that we're adding things. Now, I don't mind the fee in lieu, because we've got parks that would be useful to these residents, obviously. So, but we just need to be careful that we're not being too far out there in our demands. I do have to say, as far as the type of quality in this picture and such, that we need to make sure that we state that these need to be a long-term type of a building rather than a throwaway building. That was also one thing that developer talked, or not developer, presenter talked about in the 3D tax incomes, is that the buildings that were able to be used long-term, like 30 to 70 years, garnered much more taxes than a building that only had a lifespan of 15, and then they were having to tear it down and redo it. So whatever we decide there, we need to make sure that it's a good quality. So I appreciate the fact that we have an example in showing that we want variety and that we want it to be high quality. This is, I think, a really good thing for the city, because it will help us in the long run to keep our taxes low.
Council, let me open this up to open discussion amongst you. Is there more that you would like to say, or?
I think maybe for the purpose of reaching a settlement tonight, maybe we ought to take the concerns and as we go through the ordinance and see if we can find a resolution.
Can I make a suggestion?
Go ahead.
What I would like to do, if you will support it, would be to take you, Dave, and take you, Jordan, and put you with Noah. And Noah's heard some things today. I think there have been some legitimate things said that might want to be considered. And then for the benefit of the public and for the benefit of the council, we're coming into a period of time in the city with the holidays coming that we're going to have to kind of mix business meetings with work meetings at the same time. unless you want to be here on Christmas Eve. And with Thanksgiving coming, so our November and December meetings, the business meetings, will be also salt and peppered with a little bit of a work session. Would you support tabling this tonight? Because I don't think we're ready to act. That's not what I'm hearing. And then putting some of these comments together and forming a group to meet with Noah and come back with something that kind of has the flavor of what you've heard here, Noah. It's the middle of the road. Would you support that?
I can support that, but I can also respond to all of the suggestions tonight if we want to move on. I'm comfortable with being able to respond to everything that's been said. And
It's only 8:30.
Yeah.
In light of that, and this is our last item of business, I'm okay if we hammer it out and spend the time, because this has been going on for a long time.
All right, let's you brought up some points, Jordan. Let's bring those points up again.
Okay, so my first one was the amenities list. I actually like Dave's recommendation better, that we shorten this list and possibly just say, bring us the amenities that you are willing, just because like some of these.
Can we say suggested and then have some suggested and others?
Yeah, we can have suggested, but yeah, I agree that some of these just aren't really amenities. There's something that they would probably be providing anyway, like EV stations. That's what people are going to demand. And
Yeah.
It's not really amenity. Wi-Fi, that is not really an amenity. It's more of a expectation anymore in these
And
buildings.
like when you buy your car, you expect power windows.
Pretty much.
Okay.
so I see the point of
If
of
they're going to sell
shortening
these
this, and we could take the time to go through this and say not this, not this, not this, but I have to actually support what Dave said, and let's just say something very general about having to have amenities.
Well,
Those amenities.
If you would, the clubhouse, pool, play structure with shade, those were obvious ones because that's the type of thing we normally get. I would go in and add like basketball court, tennis court, pickleball court. And at that point, I'd really just say or similar, because
Yeah.
there's so many others, but I think we give at least a direction.
Maybe you say recreational center. That addresses quite a few.
Yeah, I
Recreation
think
or
it does
meeting
too.
center, yeah.
Many of these actually would be in a clubhouse or a,
Yeah, and a pickleball.
I do
court,
appreciate-
all of those are recreational.
I do appreciate the gas grills. I stayed at a hotel with my family, and it was great that we could go out and barbecue. It was awesome. And you could just check out your little utensils and go out and use a grill, and then, I don't know, I think that should stay. I like
Okay.
it. Okay.
So I'm not going to disagree that it's not a good thing, but my concern is if this were if this were a small property with only 20 units and that were the one amenity, would that
Oh.
cut it for you?
Probably.
Yeah, I would accept that as a third or fourth amenity, but I think we ought to leave to the list the only ones that would be acceptable as a standalone, the only amenity for a community.
How about we categorize them then? Because
You-
recreational areas is encompassing of several things like playgrounds and pickleball. So where would the gas grills sit?
So you could have like your first tier and your second tier as you have more amenities required.
Yeah.
We could do that.
And maybe you could say eating facilities, group eating facilities or something like that encompasses a pavilion and a gas range if that's what they want
And
to
that-
add.
Yeah, like
That would
Maybe
not be
we just
cheap
get pretty
either.
vague with categories.
Can we get even more vague and just say amenities shall include recreational areas,
meeting areas.
group meeting areas?
Areas.
As
Maybe there's one
approved.
more category.
Yeah, again, the more vague we make it, the more open it is just to our approval.
So community gathering would
Yeah, I like that word.
be considered your open
And-
space or your meeting.
I'd actually like to
pavilion.
call it
I'd
a
say
village gathering.
The third one could be entertainment areas because like he has game room, theater
And
room,
that's your
those
grill.
types of things are important as well.
Recreation, entertainment, and community gathering.
Yeah,
I'm okay with that.
that leaves it open.
Do we
to
make
them
this
to-
too?
But-
Is that
but
okay?
I
Noah?
don't think you can call it a community gathering because this apartment complex is not expected
No.
to cater to the whole community. So I'd
No.
prefer, even though I think it sounds silly, but just stick with the village.
Residential gathering area?
The village is generally applicable to a
party
Where-
area.
Who lives there?
Yeah.
Although,
It takes a village.
So maybe let's do this. What if we just have list of amenities as approved that include recreational, entertainment, and community benefit spaces?
So do away with the table and the
Yeah.
Yeah.
numbering system.
No,
The table stays.
Table stays. The question is we don't want to say what's on the list and what's off the list. We
It's
want
not
to
that
leave
A,
it open.
A through
A through
double B.
goes away.
Okay.
And we replace that just with a sentence that says, that includes amenity, entertainment, recreation, and community.
Gathering.
I think I got it. So under B,
Gathering areas.
we're taking away the list under B and
Yeah.
grouping it into 3 categories.
No, well, just 3 generalized categories.
Yes, 3 generalized categories:
could even split them
recreational,
on-
eating, entertainment, and community gathering.
And you can leave
You
the
could say,
other amenities deemed, sorry, Granite.
I was just going to suggest maybe we split community and gathering spots because maybe it's not the whole community, you know what I mean? Gathering spots when you have people over to visit.
But let's make it sentence form, not list form.
Okay. Let me also point out the first sentence of that section that says, "The project shall develop common space amenities proportionate to and in relation to the scale and
Right.
resident demographics of the proposed project." So we're already telling them, we want you to take into mind who is living at your place and
Right.
plan accordingly.
I respect that, but I think that we're being
Yeah.
I think this is better.
Let's not put a
Let's just-
basketball court in
yeah.
a retirement village.
I agree.
So there is, the last sentence of that section A would need to be changed to, because it says amenities must be chosen from the following list.
Yeah, that can be stricken.
It still needs to reference the table.
Are we good with that one?
I am.
Yes.
So the next one I had that we need to talk about, if you guys want to discuss this, is a minimum of 15% of the project area should be landscaped. I would like to say 20%, but I would like to say the remaining 5% could be in an adjacent park.
Noah, what's the national standards? Because I know that that was discussed in planning commission about the 15%.
So our commercial zones require 15%, but our PRD is like 20. And, you know, it also depends on how you define common space and open space. So like 15% landscaping is
This
pretty
just
easy.
says landscape.
Right,
Yeah,
that was
that's-
what the question was
that's
in
pretty
planning
easy to
commission was
meet.
just,
I don't see a
planting.
problem with going to 20%, especially where it's landscaping. If we
The-
said 20% common space, that's different.
right,
That
So-
becomes a little bit harder.
okay.
I'd like to throw out in that I understand that there are national standards and that they happen. One thing is in our city, we have pushed a little bit towards higher landscaping, and I think that's consistent with the character of our city, that we are a little bit more green, a little bit nicer, and so I prefer that standard. But the other thing that I found interesting is I too went to a session that was a different session about parks and how you get more parkland. And they even suggested, and I'm not suggesting that for this zone, but they even suggested that you could demand 30% of any new development be public green space. Now, again, I'm not making that suggestion. I'm just saying if people go that far in other communities, 20% isn't unreasonable. So that's been the standard we've set in the PRD, in other community residential areas. I'd like to keep it.
Do we want to put the fee in lieu as well for the top
I do.
5?
Only for that remaining 5. I think there has to be at least 15% landscaping on site. That last 5, I'm willing to let them
Do a
either
fee
put
in
on
lieu?
site to beautify
Or
their
buy out
project.
into a park.
Sure.
Do I sense agreement?
Yes.
I
Okay.
can agree.
Well, we're talking about actual landscaping versus
Open
common
space or
space.
common
Yes,
space,
I,
yeah.
I'm fine with that.
No on number 3.
And then my third one was just the, I think we've kind of fed this horse to death. I don't know how to make that work. It's just the design similar to the following image. We just need to make sure that that is saying, below is an example of something that could be built, but not required. But I do like Corinne's, I was reading through, and I agree we didn't really talk about, like in a lot of our other housing projects, we require, what do we call it, durable materials.
Right.
That fell out of here, at least I couldn't find it.
And one of the points in that meeting we went to is that there are large retailers who build throwaway buildings, and their property taxes are low because they are worth less, and so that does impact our tax structure.
So I like this point. My question is going to be, is it already covered in the city's architectural standards? Because if it is, we're good. But if it's not, it needs to be here, because I agree
That's
with
a question for Noah on that one, because
So if you look under architecture, under X, it says exterior surface materials in every facade shall meet the requirements of front exterior walls found, yada, 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 with the exception that no vinyl siding. So we already have that's pointing to our commercial standards, which have a high standard of brick, rock, stone.
Exterior
The standards
surface.
are probably here.
Okay.
Well, and aren't we already saying we're form-based with all of this anyway, so we would approve or disapprove of anything?
But yeah, so I guess my comment is limited to just change the wording to that to an example of something that could be built is below, but not required.
I agree.
okay, it says presently a design similar to the following image,
Yes.
but but not
Take similar
required.
out.
So I would just change it from a design similar to the
Here is
following
a
image to
rendition
say
of a
an
possible-
example
an
of
example.
something that could be built but
Providing-
not required is shown below.
Okay, except for that we do, okay. It's already spelled out in there about the variation and such.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think we've got it covered.
got
We don't
so
want
many-
flat,
yeah.
long
We do
steel
not.
structures.
But we've already addressed all that, right? On
Yes.
all of the, yeah.
Yeah,
You comfortable, counsel, with that?
yes.
So I have, on that, yes, I just have the one last concern. Are we alluding to an acceptable density? Because I don't want to.
And where exactly are you?
Well, I
Because
read
which
it in
page of the
permitted
packet?
uses. What that makes me feel like is we're saying that up to 24, meaning if it's 24 attached units, that's all going to be on the same acre.
Can you tell me where out in the packet you're looking?
Oh, I'm sorry. That would be page 461,
Okay, there I am, all right.
under proposed ordinance 10.92.20. So I'm just concerned that we're alluding to a higher density than we would accept. I'm not saying that, I mean, if this were balanced with parkland and community space or other things, then I'm not opposed to the attached units. What I'm opposed to, though, is the sense that somehow we would allow for that many units per acre on every acre.
Except for it doesn't say
can-
anywhere
I
on
can
there.
No, it doesn't say that. That's why I'm
Acreage.
asking. Does anybody else feel like this?
No,
So
at least I don't.
What's your suggestion, Dave? Is it like just
we
move it all
don't-
together?
We don't put a limit on the attached units in other zones. So is it
Yeah,
necessary in this?
We do. With the townhomes, we have 6.
I can
That's our limit.
hopefully add some clarity there. We're talking about buildings here. We're not referencing, this is not units per acre here. This is how many units can be attached in one building.
Right.
So if we
Dwelling.
wanted to add the word building so we're crystal clear that we're not talking about units per acre,
If
we
that
can.
does it, yes, because I don't want to see something that's 30 units per acre.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. And
I just feel, and it's not that Syracuse might not do that someday, but I feel like we're transitioning. Right now, we're allowing for more, but we can't just say we'll quadruple our density overnight. That's probably more than we can handle.
We got
So
that.
just add building?
Gotcha.
I'm okay with that, because I agree with what Dave's saying, but I think we're there, even if you just add that one word, a building, we're there, and there's other limits in here that help keep us from being too dense, including the setbacks, the height,
Yeah.
Yep.
the
Sorry, the
extreme
frame, too dense.
sensitivity to the surrounding areas.
And then I also just want to say publicly thank you to the Planning Commission because they worked really hard on this and the staff too. So thank you.
So, have we arrived at a point where we agree with what we have?
I think we have.
Do you want to see this again?
I think I'm ready to make a motion.
All right.
So I move that we approve, enact Chapter 1092 of the Syracuse City, we approve Ordinance 1917, enacting Chapter 1092 of the Syracuse City Municipal Code, pertaining to the mixed-use development zone MXD with the adjustments we have made in the last few minutes.
Second.
That's perfectly clear.
No.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion, council? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Cassie, would you record that as unanimous? A win for the Dolls. Thank you.
It is available.
Is available.
Problem is, the general plan doesn't have it in there because it's on hold.
No?
Yeah.
Well,
All right, let's move to public comment. We had public comment at the beginning. We always allow, if some discussion here has triggered something that you'd like to address the council, we'd welcome you to come forward. If you'd state your name and place of residence, we'd like to hear from you. I'll offer you 3 minutes. Good evening, Chad.
How we doing?
Good.
I haven't heard any discussion on any of this about where this North Davis corridor is going and when it's going in down here. Can any of you guys answer that for me?
We can. Brody, would you answer that question for us?
Sure. As far as generally where it's going, I think you might be familiar with the route.
Yeah, you sent me a thing 3 years ago of where this route's gonna go, Brody. I already know that, but I see nothing going in. I'm just wondering when it's gonna go in.
Yeah, so timing-wise, they've been doing final design right now, and what they're saying now is they'll go out to bid in the spring of 2020. They'll probably have a contractor in place in late 2020 and probably won't see construction until 2021.
Does the residents of Syracuse been shown or told where this is gonna go?
Yes, so UDOT has published the alignment of where that's going to go, and there is a website that's publicly available that you can find to see those maps.
Make a comment?
See, the concern I have is the traffic down there the last 3 years has gotten terrible down Bluff Road. I live right across the street from the pond. And everybody coming out of the bottoms and everybody coming out of Clinton and West Point use Bluff Road to go up Gentile to get to their work in Salt Lake. And it's getting worse and worse. And you guys keep putting subdivisions down through there, which is great. I know you're gonna do it no matter what we think, but it can't handle the traffic. And we need that road. The infrastructure is not capable of handling the traffic right now. So that's why we would like to know when that road's going in. And if it's not gonna go in for 2, 3, 4 years, by the time you get done stuffing houses down there, the traffic is gonna be 10 times as bad as it is right now. So that's something to think about. I'm sure you already have, but that's what a lot of us residents are concerned about. So, thank you.
Thank you, Chad. Did you want to comment, Corinne?
I just wanted to note that 3 homes have been torn down on the intersection of 3000 West and Bluff Road in preparation for this, and they've got 2 more slated here in the next couple of weeks. So they are starting to remove homes already.
So everybody in town knows where that road's going, right? Is that what you're telling me?
It's published on their
Yeah,
website.
the record of decision was in 2017. Where the road goes, we've known since 17.
Yeah, many of the affected homes have already been purchased and, as Trent
Yes.
stated, been torn down.
And there's several on 700 that are going to be removed as well.
Anyone else like to address the council? Thank you, Chad. Anyone else? Hearing and seeing none, I'll close public comment. Let's begin with Lisa on the end. Lisa, do you have?
Yes, the West Chamber of Commerce, which Syracuse is part of, is having a Meet the Candidates night, or afternoon, I'm sorry, on the 15th, which is Tuesday. So they've asked me to announce it. Anybody who is running for city council is invited to come. Starts at 12:30. They will buy you lunch, and then 1 o'clock till 2 o'clock basically gives you a few minutes to tell what your thoughts are about your campaign, and question and answer period as well. Okay. Then I want to remind everybody that we have the open house for the fire department. And Dave, I'm sure will mention the thing this Friday. And then I think that's it. Okay.
Thank you, Lisa. David?
This Friday, I would encourage you all to come to the Big Band Dinner Dance that the Arts Council is putting on. This is a major fundraiser, and You do need to respond early because it's being catered, but I would recommend that you do that. This is going to be a wonderful event, and this is the type of thing that will people will be clamoring for tickets in the future. I mean, they do this a couple of other places and it sells out instantly. So I would encourage that, and if you do have anyone of that greater generation in your family, bring them. I have been a part of these in the past, and it is so special to see the people who lived that as their generation be a part of it again. It just really is wonderful.
I have a personal question. Have they decided on the musical yet?
What's that?
Have they decided on their musical this year?
Yes, the musical has now been contracted. Next summer they will do Big Fish. So that will be this year's musical. We have director in place, producer in place. We're excited, and in fact, the entire season has been announced for the choir, the orchestra, the jazz band. All those concert dates are coming up. So the next one is this Friday with the fundraiser. It will be at Syracuse Junior High, and it will be a dance and dinner. And you can come for just the dance if you're not interested in the dinner. But it'll be wonderful.
Thank you, Dave.
And then there will be a folk music concert the orchestra is putting on later this month on the 28th. So I would encourage people to come out and support them. Their following is growing.
Corinne?
Okay. First of all, Thursday is mosquito abatement, so I haven't yet done that, and I will send you a report as such. Hopefully the Aedes aegypti have been eradicated, so I'll pray. All right. Also, if we could set up a meeting with the Planning Commission chair and yourself, he really, per city code, it talks about the Planning Commission chair giving a report, and he's still interested in doing that.
If you'll just set that up with him, give me an invite.
Okay.
Or call Jody. Jody can invite us all.
Perfect. That would be great. I will call Jody.
Yeah, call Jody and have her. Thank you. Doug?
3 things to report on today. I attended the museum board meeting. They have a couple things coming up, and by the way, with their